Okay, let's start. What's this? When the mind gets frustrated, I want to eat more than normal. And this actually doesn't help the meditation. What shall I do? Don't get frustrated. And if you do, don't eat more than normal. Yeah. Frustration arises. It happens. It's difficult to avoid sometimes. The mind reacts so quickly. The frustration is there. And we all eat normally so very unmindfully. We normally eat in social situations where we're much more interested in the person that we're eating with than the food, and so we don't normally pay attention to our eating. Or we're eating in the car, or we're eating while we're walking, or... No, eating more than normal is not helpful. It's not helpful for meditation at all. The Thais have a little saying, Gin noi, put noi, non noi, padipat mak mak. That means eat a little, sleep a little, speak a little, and practice a lot. Yeah. Eating little is very useful for our meditation practice. I lived in a monastery once where every year they had an annual kind of ceremony. There was always a lot of monks living there, more than 100. And the lay people from the village and from the district would come and offer food. And it was just a once a year thing, and it lasted for 10 days. And there was an enormous amount of food. It would be laid out on tables, kind of 4 or 5 plates deep and hundreds of plates long, huge long tables of food, and the monks would walk past with their own bowls, and kind of buffet style. It was kind of unique and not a regular kind of thing, but there was a rule that when you'd filled the bowl up with what type of food that you liked, and then after you'd finished eating, you had to walk past the teacher of the monastery and show him your empty bowl. And for each grain of rice that was left that you couldn't finish, you had to clean a toilet. And there were hundreds of toilets there. And it was very interesting to watch that, because there was so much food and such a variety of food and all the delicious things you could possibly imagine. And so on the first or second and third day, you'd see the new monks in the monastery would be, oh, this is great. Oh, I'll have some of that, I'll have some of that, walking along, filling the bowl up. And then you'd see them sitting down and kind of, still got a lot to go. Nobody wanted to clean any toilets. And so it was just like, and then you see them, and then, after 40 minutes of constant eating, you just see them, and then after, when the meditation started again at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you soon learnt how much food that you had to take, how much food was suitable. And too much food is really unsuitable for meditation. The Venerable Sariputta, the general of the Dhamma, he suggested that we should eat enough food. We should eat until the point where we know that in maybe 3 or 4 handfuls we're going to be full. So we should stop 3 or 4 handfuls before, and then top that up with water, and that's it. That's your meal for the day. So, yeah, watch how much you're eating. It really does affect your meditation practice. As for frustration, note it when it arises. Don't get caught in it. If it's already arisen, then try to create some space around it. try to stop identifying with it. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. There is frustration occurring, and know it for what it is. It's there, okay. The sooner you stop holding on to it or identifying with it, the sooner that frustration or that irritation or that annoyance is going to disappear. Don't take it personally. Of course, if you frequently think and ponder upon the object of your frustration, then you're going to turn into a frustrated mess. So don't feed it with any thoughts. It kind of links in frustration and food. So you're feeding your frustration with food. Don't feed it with your thinking. Any types of thinking, any unpleasant emotional states or any kind of habitual thought patterns associated with unpleasantness, if you feed them, if you think about them over and over, then it's going to blow up in your face. So avoid that. Eating more so that the mind will get a bit of joy, or eat balanced and continuing to feel frustrated. That's our normal pattern, isn't it? When we feel anxious, when we feel worried, when we have some stress. Some of you, when you're studying, you will know that. You've got exams coming up or something like that. It's the first thing you do. You feel stressed, you just go to the fridge and open it up and start eating. It's a very common but a very weak strategy for dealing with dukkha. They're trying to use sensuality to deal with dukkha. And we all do that kind of thing from time to time, but this is not the technique or the method. It's a very poor strategy for dealing with states of dukkha. If we don't have awareness and wisdom, if we cannot generate or activate our awareness in the present moment, then sensuality is probably your only way of dealing with dukkha. And it may have been the method and the technique that you've used throughout your life in dealing with certain stresses and worries, finding some sensuality, whether it be food or whether it be music or locking down in front of the DVD player or watching a whole series of something, 13 episodes in one sitting, or being on Google or something like that, YouTube, that kind of thing. Maybe sex, maybe too much sex, maybe too much porn, or those kind of things. You'll find that if that's your escape pattern, it's not very satisfactory. You need to develop a more skillful means of dealing with dukkha than that. Otherwise, you'll just keep chasing your tail. You'll just keep feeding states of dukkha. That'll do. For later, this little one. How shall we live our lives when we understand that we have hidden our unhappiness in the things that we like and in the people that we love? Yes. Do we have to become monks and nuns and destroy completely the ego? You don't have to, but you can. I know there's probably a few of you who are maybe thinking of shaving your head. Maybe you've had those thoughts this week. I recommend it as a period of training for yourself. Your hair will grow back, don't worry. And that's the least of your concerns when you become a monk or a nun. The hair is really nothing to worry about. But yeah, I mean, the dukkha is hidden from us. It's hidden in plain sight. It's attachment. It's attachment, and finding being in things. Ownership is all about things that I own. Being something, having a career, a title, a business card, it's all about me. So, those kind of things, just recognize if you're doing that, then that's the source of dukkha. When you're craving for sensuality and you're craving for being, you're wanting to become something, you're wanting to get something, that's fine, do it, but recognize that it has consequences. And that is a lot of dukkha. So, when we come to understand that our unhappiness is actually self-generated, there really is one thing left to do. And you can become a monk or a nun, that's great. Go and do that, experience that for yourself. Luckily, in this Pali tradition, we can ordain for a period of time if we'd like to, a month or 3 months or 1 year or 3 years or 10 years or as long as you like. And you can undergo a period of intensive training, and that's good. You'll be able to deal with dukkha more skillfully, and you'll see where craving is living, how it's causing problems. Yes, you need to completely destroy the ego to remove yourself from suffering. That's the name of the game. That's what we're all here for. Otherwise, it's just an endless day 17 samsaric mess, just flowing and flowing and flowing, searching for sensuality, delighting in that to escape from our dukkha, and then we die. And then we do it again. We start to identify as a different being. We can't remember what we were identifying as last time. And you probably can't work out what you'll be identifying with in the future either. This one seems so important, this corpse that we're carrying around, identifying with. Let it go. How do you categorize an out-of-body experience? These 5 aggregates, the I, have tried it, but is it imagination? Don't try to get anything in your meditation practice. This is really important. Trying to escape the 5 aggregates through thinking or with craving, like trying to escape craving using craving. It doesn't really work. Out-of-body experience, the nature of the mind and body process is that they're interlinked. The mind is the causal condition for the body, and the body is the causal condition for the mind. They're in a vortex conditioning each other. They arise together and they cease together. These 5 aggregates are arising and passing away simultaneously. As we practice our meditation, in your walking practice and in your sitting practice, if you can let go of the present, if you can let go of the future and the past, and if you can be firmly focused in the present moment, if you can let go of any concepts, then the mind will pick up the sabhava, or the intrinsic nature of the mind and body process. You'll break through to a particular type of perception in which the mind and body separates. It's something which you won't have to ask for clarification about. It will be extremely clear to you. It will be something that you will never forget. And the mind is immaterial. It's not the brain, it's the knowing, and it's possible that it can separate from the physicality, the five aggregates, whilst in this state of perception or in this state of insight knowledge, this jnana as it's known. You'll see very clearly this is the body made up of the four elements, and this is the mind made up of its mental factors and the knowing. It'll be very clear to you. There'll be a very clear separation. But this will only happen when the mind is in the present moment and when there is absolutely no craving or no trying for this experience. That's why it's so very important in our meditation practice to not have any expectations, not to have any anticipations, or not trying to meditate with any desire or wish for results. Because it's that very desire that takes you out of the present moment and does not allow you to have that perceptive jnana, to have that insight. So please don't try to get anything in your meditation practice. That is what's blocking you. In fact, it's very amazing, and it happens every month, that people can be on the retreat here and they can be practicing very skillfully, following all the guidelines, putting all the instructions in place, and meditating for many hours, really trying. They're putting all the conditions in place. Everything is lined up. It's ready to pop, so to speak. But during the retreat it doesn't, because there's some subtle craving or wanting some results to happen. So all the conditions are there, but craving is capping it, not letting those conditions give rise to their results. And on the morning we come out from the meditation, it's a huge relief. Oh, it was a good retreat. Yeah. Okay. And so they give up trying, give up wanting to achieve anything more from the retreat and start chatting with people. But all the conditions are still in place. They're all still there. And then you'll find they'll wander off to the viewpoint and just have a nice relax with a cup of coffee or something, and then boom, they have a fantastic insight into the nature of the mind and body. This insight is called Nama Rupa Paricheda Jnana, so the delineation of mind and matter. And they see things clearly for themselves. So even in the days after the retreat, all of you have put the conditions in place. They're all there. There is at this point on the retreat only one thing that is stopping you, and that is craving or wanting some results to happen. If you can drop that, it's going to flow naturally, just like water bubbling up out of a spring. You won't be able to stop it. So drop, in the last few days of the retreat here, drop any trying and instead develop contentment. Try to be as content as you possibly can. Don't wish for anything to happen, don't want for anything. Just be completely accepting of this is how it is, and enjoy yourself. Be playful. We can become all dried up when we're trying. We get too serious. We get what the Thais call kriyat. Or we worry about things. When I was in my first few months of monkhood, I hadn't really done any meditation before I became a monk. I became a monk so that I could learn how to meditate. I hadn't been on a retreat like you had been on. And so I jumped straight in the deep end, and they threw the robes on me, and I found myself living in a little hut on top of a hill. Oh, I'm a monk, I better meditate. And so I was trying really hard, and because of that trying, I was becoming frustrated, and the monks just kept saying to me, "May don't kit mark, may don't kit mark." which I didn't really understand the meaning of, which kind of frustrated me even more. I knew that kit meant to think, and I knew that mark meant a lot. They were saying, don't think a lot, don't think a lot. And I was trying to stop. Actually, kit mark means to worry. And so they said, don't worry, don't worry. It was only when it doesn't work, I'm hopeless, this is useless, and just relaxed and started doing some gardening that it actually happened. Oh, boom, it happened. So if any of you feel like doing any gardening, a bit of segue in there, yes. Yeah. We'll talk more about those Vipassana insights. I'm waiting an appropriate day to speak about them. We'll get to them later. I teach only this, said the man without a self. I guess you're... I teach only this. Yes. The Buddha did use pronouns. He was fully awakened and fully enlightened. Enlightened beings still use pronouns. Although the Buddha quite often, when he was referring to himself, would call himself the Tathagata. Tata means thus or such, and gata means having gone to. He called himself the one who has gone to thusness. So if you want to go around calling yourself that, or something similar to that, or not using pronouns, you can, but it's just regular speech. It's just a pronoun. Don't get concerned by that kind of thing. We have to use that so people don't think we're completely nuts and go around talking in the third person or saying, oh, it's going to go down to the beach now, and that kind of thing. It's going over to the viewpoint. Or you can start using your name instead of saying I or me. Our nun does that quite a lot. She always refers to herself as Mechi, as the nun. And she never refers to herself as me or I. She always says, oh, the nun's cooking now, the nun's going here, the nun's going there. And so I kind of got used to it, but it's common, the common thing. Yes, I teach only this. Maybe we should expand on that. The Buddha was only teaching dukkha. He said, now as before, monks, I teach dukkha and the end of dukkha. That was his primary project. He wasn't interested in anything else, even though his knowledge was vast. He could comprehend whatever he wanted to. He had omniscience. He could see the background of people. He could see the karmic causes and conditions for things. He understood the different worlds, the nature of the universe, the nature of samsara. He understood all those things, all the interesting spiritual things that you may want to know about, the different traditions and what their practices are. But he focused on dukkha and the cause of dukkha, because that was really the only meaningful thing to teach beings who are stuck in samsara. In fact, he said there are beings with little dust in their eyes. He was exhorted by one of the Brahmas. He almost didn't teach. He almost thought, well, no one is going to possibly understand this. Beings are so stuck in the mud. But then he said, well, the Brahma told him there are beings with little dust in their eyes. There are those who can understand this teaching. And he thought, oh, who are the people that can understand it? And he thought about his two teachers, and Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta. And when he recollected on those two teachers, he kind of found out that they both just passed away. very unfortunately, they died just before he became enlightened, and so they missed out on hearing the teaching of the Blessed One. And then the Buddha set off on foot to find his old friends, the group of 5, the Panchavaggi, and he taught them. And one of them, Kondanya, understood the Dhammacakka Pavattana Sutta, the great turning of the wheel, the Four Noble Truths. That's when the Four Noble Truths had been taught again by a fully self-awakened being, and the Dharma started to roll. And it's still rolling until today. So he was really only interested in dukkha and the end of dukkha, even though there was much that he understood. And this is what beings need to hear. Okay. There is a massive resistance within me to letting go of the old ways of trying to control things, which seems to come down to a fear of trusting that everything will be okay if I let go. It'll be okay. Let go. That I will have what I need or deeply want. Deeply wanting. Water, food, love, physical safety, a feeling of safety. How do I work with this? First of all, we need to work out what we need and what we want. These are separate and different things. What we want is not really necessary. In fact, it causes suffering. What we need, well, is necessary. You will need some clothing to cover up the nakedness of the body. You will need some food to keep it functioning. It's highly desirable to have a place to lie it down in the evening so it can go to sleep, although it's not completely necessary. You can live on the street, but I don't suspect it's much fun. That's what you're afraid about, isn't it? We want to try and control things. It's very normal for this. We think that there's safety and security in samsara. This is at the heart of the problem here. We think that there's some kind of security in material things. That if we could just get this and just have that, just meet that special person and have them in our lives, then everything is going to be okay. But all these things are very impermanent. They arise and pass away. They really don't hold any safety or security in them. To consider that they will make you safe and secure is delusion. There's no safety in it. So stop looking for safety and security in that. It's not there. Safety and security comes from your own inner practice. In the morning we chant the refuges. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghāṃ saranang gacchāmi. I go to the Buddha for refuge, I go to the Dhamma for refuge, I go to the Sangha for refuge. We go for refuge. By saying those words and by taking that, by understanding that meaning, we're going for real refuge. We're going for refuge in the Dhamma. That's a real thing that we can find safety and security in. There's nothing else that offers that level of safety and security. Have faith, have confidence in the Buddha and his teachings. Have faith and confidence in the practice of sila, virtue and morality. See how it protects you. Have faith in shame and fear of wrongdoing, hiri ottappa. When you practice sila, have a look at the difference it makes in your life. Sila acts as a kind of protective barrier. It's one of those wonderful things that when we establish the 5 precepts, for example, or in this case on the retreat, the 8 precepts, it creates a kind of barrier which it's not impenetrable, but it kind of locks out various conditions which could be established so that old unpleasant karmas don't have a chance to arise. The practice of sila is like putting a lid on the conditions. We're putting in place a set of conditions with the practice of sila that allow old kamasati or old karmic energy, certain karmic energies to flow and to manifest. Most of them are to do with pleasant feeling. So the practice of sila allows old wholesome intentions to give their fruit, to give their manifestation, and it blocks the old unwholesome intentions from giving their resultants. So it acts as a kind of protection for us. It's a kind of safety net in our lives, the practice of virtue. Have a look at those people who are being virtuous, who are practicing in that. You'll find that they're much happier than those people who are not, those who are running around and killing and stealing and sexually misconducting themselves and addicted to drinking and addicted to drugs, and have a look at the mess that their life is in by those behaviors and see how much suffering they've got. And for those people who are practicing sila, see their level of happiness. It's simply a set of conditions. Sila is what protects us. I encourage you to practice sila if you want to have a happy life. You can block a lot of heavy karmas from coming through the pipeline. You can't block everything, but you can filter, if you like. You can filter away the ones that may have had a chance to arise if that sila wasn't in place, and you can experience the ones which probably wouldn't have arisen if that sila wasn't in place. So in both ways, we're blocking the unwholesome intentions from giving their fruit, and we're allowing the wholesome intentions to give their fruit. And so our lives get better. Wholesome intentions lead to resultants linked with pleasant feeling. Unwholesome intentions lead to resultants that are linked with unpleasant feeling. So if you want to experience pleasantness, put the conditions in place. That's where there's safety and security in the practice of Dhamma. Go for refuge. When we're going for refuge, that means that we're taking the Buddha's teaching as our primary vehicle in our spiritual practice. It doesn't mean that we're blocking out all other types of practices. You can still investigate other teachings. You can still, do other types of meditation as well. But when we've gone for refuge, we're recognizing and taking the Buddha Dhamma Sangha as our primary vehicle for our enlightenment. And so when we take that on board, there's a lot of contentment. There's a lot of gratitude for the teaching and what it does to us. So, we take that on board. Recollect on the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Go for refuge. Practice your sila. Practice samadhi. Make the mind one-pointed. One-pointedness of mind removes the hindrances. The hindrances are our primary source of suffering in the present moment. Because of the hindrances, our cravings for sensuality or our aversion states or our boredom, our laziness, our restlessness, our discontented agitation, our doubts and worries, uncertainties and concerns. When we practice samadhi, making the mind one-pointed, these hindrances are pushed aside. They're suppressed. They're not fully removed, but they are temporarily removed. And so we experience states of happiness. The practice of metta is a very good example of this. We can practice loving kindness. It's good for ourselves and it's good for others. So we can practice that, block the hindrances. This is another refuge you can go for in the practice of Dhamma. Of course, the best type of Dhamma practice is the development of wisdom. And this also will lead you to escaping states of dukkha. This really is your only hope of safety and security in samsara. There is no other refuge. There is no other safe harbour. It's all impermanent and arising and passing away. Trying to find safety and security in material things, you're doomed. When you get those things, then you have to spend your time protecting them. And when they break, or when they disappear, or when they're no longer functioning, then you have dukkha. Trying to get them is dukkha. Trying to protect them is dukkha. Trying to keep them is dukkha. So there's no safety in that stuff. Buying a concrete box in the city for €500,000 is not going to be a source of safety and security. It's going to be a troublesome burden which you're going to have to work for 30 years to kind of keep and maintain. And in the end of the day, what is it anyway? It's a lump of concrete. Is that what your safety? Yes, I'm sitting in my concrete box. There's no safety and security in that. Recognize that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be a homeowner or you shouldn't strive to have your little piece of land where you can build a house and have a garden and feed your goat or whatever it is that you want to do. But recognize that it's not a safe place. There is no security in that. It's samsara. Welcome to prison. It's all arising and passing away. If you're identifying with it, it's dukkha. So, how do you work with that? Go for refuge. Trust. Have trust and faith and confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Take that as your refuge. Of course, you can still educate yourself, get a job, go hunting for a place to live, get a partner, have children, and all the rest of it. But recognize that the 5 aggregates are a heavy burden. There's no safety and security in the 5 aggregates. And when you do get a partner and have 10 aggregates, recognize that there's a slightly higher level of dukkha that's going to come with that. And when you start to have a few children, then 1 child or 2, 15, 20, 25 aggregates, if you're attached and clinging to them, then there's probably going to be even more dukkha. You'll need to be skillful in observing and watching. Otherwise, you'll be very concerned about things. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a family. Have a family. Do as you like. Have fun. Be good. I'm trying to have some fun myself here. What do you think about prayer as a spiritual practice? Can it be viewed as a conceptual meditation? I've never really been someone who prays. I did go to a Christian, I guess you can call it, high school, where we had to sit there, and then when they said, let us pray, we put our heads down, but it was mostly just looking at the other people, and I never really got into it, so I'm not quite sure what it's all about. A lot of people do get a lot of solace in prayer. We don't mock or we don't making fun of anybody's spiritual practice. You can do that if it calms the mind down, if it removes the hindrances, then it's a good thing. If you're waiting for an external agent to make your life happy, you may be waiting a long time. Happiness doesn't come from outside. Happiness is born from contentment within. Contentment is the proximate cause of happiness. Being cool and calm with whatever is in the present moment is the source of happiness for us. By all means, pray. Recognize, though, it's not really the path to enlightenment, but have some fun with it if you want to. Is it a conceptual meditation? I think in a lot of spiritual traditions they were able, through prayer, to develop one-pointedness of mind in some capacity or other. And that one-pointedness of mind led them to an understanding of their God or Brahman or Shiva or Yewa or Allah or these types of experiences. These things are internal. I think God is, or whatever you like to call that experience of one-pointedness or oneness, a connection with the universe, a connection with the whole. That's an internal experience. It's an internal conditioned experience. It's not imposed on us by a being somewhere outside. At least that's been my experience so far. I welcome anybody to come and say hello if they're around. But it's a conceptual meditation. God lies within. Within these five aggregates is the cessation of suffering, the arising of suffering and the cessation of suffering. Is Sammasambuddho and Sammasambuddhassa the same? Yes, it's the same. It's just a grammatical ending there. Buddho is the nominal case of the noun, and Buddhassa is the, I can't really remember my thing. Is it the genitive or the locative? Those of you who have languages that declined, I know German does, English doesn't, so we use a little word at the end. So Buddhassa means to the Buddha. So it's just that, same meaning. Rightly self-awakened or fully self-enlightened. How can I deal with a traumatic experience strongly rooted, like being abandoned? Yes, traumas, especially from a young age, can permeate our lives, especially if we've been identifying with this trauma. If we've been creating our sense of self out of this trauma, if we've used it as a foundation for our being, then it will permeate our entire lives. Excuse me. First of all, we can start to, in something like being abandoned, for example, we need to generate forgiveness to those people that may have abandoned us. We need to develop that forgiveness. Recognize that when people become parents, they may not be ready to become parents. I don't think anyone is really ready. One day you're not, and then after the pregnancy test, next day you are. All of a sudden you're going to be a parent, and then bang, it hits you like a train. And some people are not particularly ready for that. They may have many other things going on in their lives. It's not a matter of loving or caring for their child, but they just may be incapable at that time of taking care of others. Maybe they can't even take care of themselves. So recognize the nature of samsaric experience, and that, forgive. Actually, gratitude is also a very important mind state to develop. They may not have been the best parents. They may not have been able to provide everything for you. They may not have been able to fully give you that care and nurturing that would be ideal, or perhaps you think you deserve, and you do deserve it. Every child needs to be nurtured, and every child needs love. But recognize they probably did try their best. If they were not so successful, forgive them in that capacity. And these traumatic kind of experiences run deep, and it's something that we have to slowly forgive. And even the Buddha said, even if we were to carry our parents around on our shoulders for the rest of our lives, we wouldn't be able to repay our debt to them. It's very important, actually, that we develop gratitude towards our parents. Many of us have difficult relationships with our parents. I've been quite fortunate. My parents were very nice. Hi, Mum. And yeah, I had a lot of support and a lot of freedom to do what I wanted to do, perhaps too much, but some people are not so fortunate. The external circumstances makes childhood traumatic and difficult, and that's very unfortunate. How to deal with it? Don't take it personally. I know it's difficult to practice that, but recognize that when you take those difficulties onto yourself, when you start to identify with them strongly, there will be suffering taking place. So try to relinquish, try to let go. When you're not constantly in trauma, but there may be an underlying kind of subconscious thing that plays out in your relationships with others and in your outlook to life. Those things may be affected by your childhood, and recognize life is not easy. What do they say? Life wasn't meant to be easy, or something like that. I'm not sure about that, but it's not easy. It's dukkha. There is dukkha. When we recognize and understand the nature of conditioned samsaric existence, the stronger that we identify with our experiences, with our past, the stronger the identification, the more the dukkha. So we can practice things like loving kindness and gratitude and respect as a temporary overcoming of any traumatic experience, but to really overcome it, it means letting go. And letting go means to stop identifying with the experience. We need to create space around the experience and recognize any further identification with this is going to cause more trouble. And it's about loosening the grip on that kind of thing. What are your tips or advice do you have for someone contemplating a year-long or maybe indefinite meditation pilgrimage or search for truth? Perhaps you could speak of your own experience and of others you know who have done similar things. don't carry much in your bag. Yeah, that's the worst thing, having a heavy backpack when you're going on your spiritual pilgrimage. Start with a very small bag, and then you won't fill it up, and then you'll be light. The Buddha said just as the monks and the nuns had very little equipment, just as a bird has its wings as its only companion, just go with a few clothes. And I did my first, I think in my 6th year as a monk, I decided I had to go to India for a spiritual pilgrimage and go and see the place where the Buddha was enlightened. And well, there are 4 places: in Lumpini, where the Buddha was born, and just across the border in Nepal, and then Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha was enlightened, and then in Sarnath, near Varanasi, where the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths for the first time. And fourthly, the place where the Buddha passed away, Kusinara. Those 4 places are worth visiting. In fact, we have in the Pali text those beings that have the opportunity to go to these 4 places should go to these 4 places. And what you find happens when you visit these 4 places is an enormous amount of faith arises. You come in physical contact with the locations where the Buddha has been and where the Buddha has taught. It's incredible. There's an incredible feeling in Bodh Gaya when you go to the Mahabodhi temple and you visit the place where the Buddha was enlightened. And meditating there is, there's a wonderful energy, if we can call it that. There's a wonderful atmosphere. There's a great deal of faith, and a lot of devotees, a lot of pilgrims are coming from around the Buddhist world to come and visit this place where the Buddha was enlightened. So I strongly recommend you go and visit these places if you have a chance. And there's a few other places as well. My personal favorite is Savatthi, which you can look it up on the map. It's somewhere there in the Ganga basin. Savatthi. Savatthi is a place where the Buddha spent 25 rains retreats. And there's a very famous monastery there called Anathapindikassa Arame, the monastery of Anathapindika. Anathapindika at that time was an extremely wealthy merchant, very, very rich man, a millionaire. And he wanted to offer a beautiful park that belonged to one of the princes at that time. The prince's name was Jeta, and his park, his royal park, was for his own personal enjoyment. And Anathapindika means the feeder of the hungry. He was always doing a lot of merit making, a lot of food offerings for the poor, and he wanted to offer that park that belonged to Prince Jeta. He wanted to offer that to the Sangha. He wanted that beautiful parkland to be a place where the monks could meditate. And Prince Jeta wasn't very keen on the idea, and Anathapindika kept bugging him, kept telling him, yeah, I want to, please, let me buy this piece of land. And as the story goes, Prince Jeta said, okay, well, if you can cover this land with gold coins, kahapana, then you can have it. And Anathapindikasa got all his gold and treasure out, and he covered all the land of that area. And so it became a park for the Sangha. And if we go to Savatthi, we can see all the foundations for all the buildings, all the old monasteries are still there, and even the foundation of the Ganda Kuti, which is the hut where the Buddha lived for those 25 rains seasons, is still there. Go and visit that one. Well, that's wonderful. Go and sit in the hut where the Buddha once sat, where the Buddha once lay down and went to sleep. I did it myself. It was a full moon night. I was staying in the Burmese monastery across the road. They have a big gate on the thing. You're only allowed into the park. It's more of a park now. During the daytime, from kind of 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon or something. But the Burmese monk showed me a hole in the fence, and we went through in the nighttime, and it was a full moon, and we went in, and it was just absolutely wonderful. We went into the Ganda Kuti, and I remember just going in there, and it's got 2 sections, the inner room and the outer room, and sitting down in the corner and thinking, the Buddha must have sat here at one point. I'm sitting where and there's a lot of, I can even start to feel it now. There's a lot of faith, a lot of pity started to arise, and the body started shaking, and I'm reliving that experience right now. So go to Savatthi, a wonderful place to visit for a spiritual pilgrimage. So there's some good places in India. Sri Lanka is also a wonderful place for a spiritual pilgrimage. India is more of a go and have a look kind of thing. Sri Lanka is a place where, with a very, very old Buddhist culture, over 2,000 years, a lot of old monasteries, and there's a lot of forest monasteries, a lot of places where you can go and meditate, and there's some good instructors there. Sri Lanka has a wonderful climate. It's very close to the equator, and it's a tropical paradise island with a huge mountain in the middle, and you can kind of choose your elevation, and as you go up, you can find different temperatures. And I stayed in a place for one rains retreat called Bandarawela, and in the daytime it was 24 degrees, and in the nighttime it was 22 degrees. Just perfect weather amongst the tea plantations, and all the facilities for meditation are there. Hundreds of monasteries all over the island. It's a beautiful place to go and visit, and a good place to practice. If you want to go a little bit further, you can go and visit China as well. China has a remarkable Buddhist culture and history, and you can visit there. Before I went to China, or I kind of planned. Some of you may know China a bit more than I do, but there's 9 holy mountains in China. 5 of them are Taoist, and 4 of them are Buddhist, and they're kind of strategically located around the place. The 4 Buddhist ones are, there's one in the south, one in the east, north and west. You can look them up. Go to those mountains, and they're covered in monasteries, dozens and dozens of monasteries that you can visit, and 1,000 years of history of meditation and Dhamma going on there, and it's a very festive atmosphere. There's a lot of pilgrims going to visit, and at that time I was a monk, so I was quite lucky. I could travel around just going from monastery to monastery. That's one of the advantages of doing your spiritual pilgrimage in the robes. You always have a place to stay. When you go to India, you won't have to look for hostels or hotels or that kind of thing. There's monasteries everywhere, and when you're wearing the robes, you're wearing the robes. The monks of the different traditions will welcome you and give you a bed for a few nights, give you some food, and you can do your practice, and you can go here and there. It's one of the wonderful things about being in the Sangha. All of a sudden you have 50,000 homes everywhere that you can go all over the world. You can turn up and knock on the gate, and they'll see, they can tell by the color of your robes where you're from, and you can go in there. And I suspect it's the same for nuns as well. If you're doing doing that if you're a lady and you want to take the robes and go on a spiritual quest. That's well worth it. China has also some pretty spectacular historical places. The Dunhuang caves, which is over near, kind of getting over towards Urumqi, over near the Pakistan border. What was once the Silk Road. There's some caves over there like you've never thought imaginable. Over hundreds of years, pilgrims going, traders going here and there, hundreds of caves carved out of solid cliff faces, full of paintings and shrines and things like that, in the middle of kind of rolling 150 meter high sand dunes. It's kind of slowly being eaten by the desert, like the Gobi Desert, I think, is out there somewhere. And to arrive there is really quite spectacular. So from there you can travel up into Tibet if you want to, and of course there's a lot of monasteries there, a lot of places to go and visit, a lot less than what there once was. So you can go for lots of spiritual pilgrimages. If you're keen and intent on furthering your meditation practice, I highly recommend Myanmar. Go to Burma, travel around the different meditation centers there. There's some wonderful centers with some wonderful practices, and we can talk about that more another day, perhaps. Excuse me. Lots of different centers that you can go and practice in the desert, in the mountains, in the forest, in the city. There's hundreds and hundreds of monasteries. And most of them, the Burmese are very accommodating to foreigners coming to learn about the Buddha's teaching. They very much like you to come. They're very accommodative. There's a special meditation visa you can get when you go to Burma. I don't know if that exists anywhere else. They allow you to have 3 months. And if you want to stay for longer, then they'll extend it out for a year. And if you want to stay for a few years, well, you're very welcome to stay for a few years. I went to Myanmar with the intention of doing a 3-month retreat and ended up staying for 4.5 years. So it's a very, very nice place. Make sure you contact your parents while you're there. I didn't. They're a little bit upset with me, but where have you been? I'm on the path, Mother. So, yeah. There's a... What have you been doing? Yeah, it's a wonderful country full of wonderful people. Of course, Thailand offers that opportunity as well. There's hundreds of, I think there's 35,000 monasteries in Thailand. Now that you can chant, this is quite an important part of getting in the door of the monastery in Thailand. You can turn up, do a bit of chanting, and they'll be very happy with you, and perhaps give you a room to stay for a few nights, and if you're helpful and nice, then they'll let you stay for a bit longer if you're a meditator. Yeah, you can search around for that. We can talk about specific monasteries and what they're like, perhaps at another time. If animals live in a lower state than humans, what can they do to move upwards? Is there something we can do to help them in their evolution? Don't eat them. That's not helpful. Yes. Yes. The apaya lock, the states of loss. The 3 lower realms, the hellish realm and the realm of preta, or ghosts, the realm of tirachana, or animals. It's called the state of loss because it's very difficult that once you fall down into those states, it's very difficult to come up out of them. You may have recognized that there are billions and billions and billions of animals on the planet, far more than there are the number of humans. So there's lots of empty seats for those people who are not protecting themselves with their sila. Recognize that the 5 precepts are the condition for human rebirth. And without the 5 precepts, you may struggle to obtain a human rebirth, so the tradition states. But be careful about that. Be really careful. Once you fall down, animals are known as dve hetuka. That means they have only 2 roots. Humans have 3 roots. The roots of non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. Which means it's possible to develop states of non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. It's possible to come out of greed, hatred, and delusion. But for animals, they have only 2 roots. They have only non-greed and non-hatred, but they don't have non-delusion. It's not possible for them to come out of delusion. It's not possible for them to realize for themselves the 4 noble truths. And so it's very difficult. Once you're in a state, a lower state, very easy to just start to develop unwholesome characteristics and behaviors, mind states, which perpetuates and continues the state of animal birth. Some traditions or teachers will say that once you get born as an animal, then it's 500 lives. You stay for 500 lives as that in that particular animal world. And I don't know whether it's true or not. I don't have the ability to really know that. I'm just passing on that tradition to you. It may account for instinct in animals. They seem to do the same things. They seem to know instinctively what they need to be doing with themselves, especially with their young and how they care for them. Maybe because they've been doing it for many lifetimes. It just continues on and on. So, what can we do to help them in their evolution? I guess we can be nice to them, let them develop some good qualities and some good traits that may be helpful for them. Care for them in some way. You can do that. Feed them, they seem to like that. Wash them, they seem to like that. If you can catch them, you can wash them. So, animals. What else? Can you share more about the teachings that took the Buddha to the 7th and 8th jhanas? What did his teachers advise him, or what practices were they? Are the practices we know so far designed to take us to enlightenment? I don't know what the Buddha's teachers taught him or how he got into those jhanic states. It doesn't really say in the old Pali texts. I suspect the same conditions that we need to put in place for the 7th and 8th jhanas were relevant at that time. I can't really comment too much on it. The base of nothingness and the base of neither perception nor non-perception is a bit beyond my pay grade at the moment, so I don't know. I don't know what the Buddha's teachers taught him. What and where are soul and spirit? What are they made of? Feelings are feelings energy or illusion? What and where are the soul and spirit? Wow. Seems to be a very persistent idea that we are somebody, that we have a soul. That's kind of the incarnation, especially the Hindu tradition or the other meditative traditions, even the Christian tradition. I don't really know what they are. They're just words. Soul or the spirit kind of sounds nice. And from my investigation, there's just the 5 aggregates arising and passing away. There's nothing more to it than that. I don't know. Feelings are energy or illusion. Pleasantness and unpleasantness are definitely kind of elements that arise. They're there. Feelings. Pleasant. Some things are pleasant, some things are unpleasant. Some things are neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Structurally, it arises every moment. They're not an illusion, but they don't belong to us. They're not me or mine. If you take them or use them as a conditioner, then you'll be in trouble. It's the tradition of reincarnation relies on a soul, and that is that there's some enduring entity to which karma, which is creating karma and which receives the results of karma. And this soul is somehow incarnating into different bodies as it travels through the samsaric experience. This is kind of the classic Hindu teaching. It's a conceptual idea that is useful for teaching stories about morality to people. Be a good person or you'll go to hell. Be a good person or you go to heaven. Be a bad person or you'll go to hell, and that kind of thing. They generally, because people are so addicted to this idea that they are somebody, it's very difficult to conceive that we're not something or we must be something. There must be some kind of self. There must be some vehicle which is traveling through time. I must be something. And this is a very persistent thought that continues to arise in beings, and it has been identified as the cause of suffering. It's the second noble truth. This belief, this craving to be something. And that's why the Buddha identified it as such. It's this enduring idea that I am, even after death, even beyond death. I must be existing as something. This pleasure and pain is being experienced by someone or something. It's very difficult to get your head around the fact that this is a very impersonal process. It's very difficult to get your head around that there is this separation between you and me and all of us here in the hall is a conceptual one. That the boundaries between us are just an idea, a deluded idea, a very persistent and deluded idea. But in our jnana, in our knowledge, we see the nature of the universe and we know that actually there's no individuality out there. There's just cause and effect It's just aggregates, physicality, mental states, and consciousness arising and passing away. Unfortunately, it's been infected by a virus. It's been infected by this idea that it has to be someone, it has to become someone, or it wants to be something. And because of that, it continues. The process continues on. You can't think your way to wisdom. It's not something that you can really kind of get to through thinking. Thinking just doesn't take you deep enough into the matrix to see the structure of it. Thinking's part of the problem, actually. So this sense of soul is a very persistent one throughout the religious and spiritual traditions of the world, because everybody's addicted to being. They want to be something. We can see that this body is not us. We can see that the feelings are not us. We can see that the perception and the consciousness is not. Most people get stuck on consciousness. When the consciousness expands and permeates and pervades the entire universe, this is God. Or this is the true self. This is what I really am. This is what the big soul is all about, the Parama Atta. And then we're just a spark of the divine, a spark of the Parama Atta, we're the Jiva Atta, this sense of self, the little self that gets incarnated into the physical body over and over again, continuously throughout time. It's a very persistent and enduring idea in the lives of humans, in the human civilization. But the Buddha gave us hundreds of ways to examine our own personal experience, the own five aggregates, and if you keep looking and you keep searching, it's not there. It's only there as an idea. It exists when you think of it, and when you stop thinking of it, it's not there anymore. It's a conception. It's a conceptual elaboration. It's a papancha, conceptual proliferation, very persistent, very continuous. And so it's forever abiding there. We all want to be something. The thought of not being something terrifies us. And so even after death we conceive that, well, I must be something. I'll be a soul, or I'll be a spirit, or something like that. I'll be a true self. But it's not. It's empty. It's empty of self and things pertaining to self. It's void of reality. This is just an idea that arises and passes away. It's like the past. It's an idea that arises and passes away. The future, it's an idea that arises and passes away. The sense of self is an idea that arises and passes away. And all the conceptions about a self, whether it's infinite or finite, or whether it's perceptive after death, or whether it's not perceptive after death, or what happens to it, all these questions and all these considerations are just more elaborations of me, mine, and I. It's just the mind trying to conceive itself in some way or another. That's all. The mind is trying to conceive of itself as a being, as a something. And this is the cause of the matrix. Just this conceiving and this conception. So, it's, there's some beautiful literature out there about the self and about the soul and about the spirit. It's very uplifting, it's very beautiful. And you can read about that. It's very inspiring. But it's just an idea. Just an idea that's arising. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it God within, you can call it your true self, or you can call it the divine spark, or whatever it is. If you're conceiving it as me, mine and I, then you're conceiving. And it's going to be ever otherwise than that, the truth. I think that's enough for this afternoon. We're going on for a while now. Probably getting bored of my rambling. We'll call it there. Okay, enjoy your walking meditation.